Eddie Frederick has got it all. Inspiration, motivation, great advice, and biting opinion pieces as only Eddie Frederick can deliver. Eddie Frederick has got it all. EDDIE-FICATION with consultant human resource development and training specialist Eddie Frederick is powered by Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited and Tillian Group's Country Cold Store.
Self-isolation is not a prison sentence, but it's the safest way to protect the people around you from possibly getting sick. Continue to comfortably buy your groceries and whatever you need, even when in quarantine. Use Coop Bank's e-banking to transfer funds to a close friend or family member's account and get them to do your shopping for you. Log on to www.grenadacoopbank.com and sign up for Coop Bank's e-banking.
I want the best for my family. Every meal has to be perfect. Every bite has to say, There's no doubt in my mind that the best in frozen meats and vegetables has to come from the Country Cold Store. Hams, turkeys, sausages, beef, pork, chicken. I just don't know my family is in safe hands. Thank you, Country Cold Store, for being there for us for the past 40 years.
The Country Cold Store, providing the best in frozen meats and vegetables since 1969.
Co-op Bank introduces e-payments, our new e-banking feature that allows you to send money to friends or family. E-payments, the swift, simple, and secure way of transferring money. Welcome home. Believe in our strength, we'll stand by you. Protection from all perils, big and small. Reassurance we get, it's so clear to see. Peace of mind, that's our service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Continuing Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.
We have a special challenge to all who decide to come into the room and be a part of EDDIE-FICATION. The person making the most outstandingly relevant comment in keeping with our topic is in for a special prize. On the table is a breakfast for two at Oliver's Restaurant at world-famous 6-star Diamond 5 Diamond Spice Island Beach Resort. Lucky winner must make a reservation and present a gift certificate upon arrival at the appointed time to redeem this gift. This will give you a wonderful opportunity to experience great service like you've never experienced it right here in Grenada from a business that is locally owned, locally managed, locally staffed, and locally trained. A true symbol of our national independence, Spice Island Beach Resort.
Eddie Frederick has got it all. Inspiration, motivation, great advice, and biting opinion pieces as only Eddie Frederick can deliver. Eddie Frederick has got it all.
Wonderful. And of course, it's a beautiful, beautiful Saturday evening here in the Spice Island. Let me just find my guide for this evening's delivery. I trust and pray that you can hear me. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, because I'm in a different location and I've been tinkering today with technology. Poor me, yes, with me old aardvark self, but you know how that goes. I want to say that this is our 95th Independence Live session and our 41st for 2022. We are living in some trying times indeed, but Jim Rohn is on record as having said, ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is poverty, devastation, and tragedy. It all stems from ignorance. If only we would make an effort, folks, in more numbers to treat our malady as perpetuated by our commitment to ignorance, in the main, that is, Grenada would be in a much better position indeed. But to know that you do not know is the best. To think that you know when you do not know is a disease. Recognizing this disease is to be free of it, because once you recognize you have a disease, then you will take steps to deal with its cure. Ignorance has been known to ruin the most beautiful of relationships. In introduction to this sassy subject matter here today, I am required to quote George Bernard when he said, "Beware of false knowledge. It is more dangerous than ignorance." We are all best advised, folks, to cultivate and hone a very good character, steeped in, I must say, integrity, so that you can, matter of course, do the right thing, whether anyone is watching or not. Could you imagine a persistent, committed, and even disciplined person without character? Boy, that's dangerous. We can see all of them around us quoting the Bible and making papi show and mama guy with the scriptures when it pleases them. We see them every day. And that is really a sad reflection of who we are as a people. Today's subject, I must say, is well chosen. Well chosen as by the continuous action of many of us, we continue to falter, adding flames to the fuel of ignorance. Goodly folks, ignorance is used wittingly or unwittingly by many of us as a fuel to fan the flames of deprivation, dunceness, lack, being at the bottom, being condemned to a life of barely getting by, and everything else that banishes us to live forgettable lives, where when many of us die, we have absolutely no evidence left behind that we lived. That is really a sad reality. Since when we as a nation have become so forgettable? That's a travesty, you know, folks. Come on, folks, share the live. There's a lot coming up here tonight. And I'm sure a lot more would love to have. I always like to see people getting it live and direct instead of after the fact. But be that as it may, quite a number of people get it after the fact anyway. I'd like to say thanks to Sawandi, for instance, for taking the programs and circumcising them into biteable pieces and putting them back out there. That tells you how valuable he thinks these utterances, these sharings are, so that he can take his time and invest in them as much as he does. I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. In too many cases, some of us are remembered for the wrong things. We have had a revolution here in Grenada for 43 years ago, 13th March 1979, and just about every succeeding administration ignored it completely, as if it never happened. It's not a part of our history. But why did they do that? They did it to the peril of the nation, whose affairs they were elected to lead and manage. What is that about? What is that about? I will dare to say that they were ashamed that if its history were taught, it would have created a progressive atmosphere in Grenada among our people, and it would have demanded beyond their capacity and capabilities to deliver, as they were not prepared to do the work they were elected to do. So they saw to it that nothing much, if at all anything, will learn about the progressive time in Grenada's history. And who is recounting or about to recount this progressive time? An incident that happened in Grenada. Who's about to do that? An old Giriite. Interestingly, the administration coming out of a political organization that spent the longest period of time in government in this Grenada, in a post-revolutionary context, did the least to provide answers to the development needs of our people. And the most they did was to duncerize and pauperize the entire population, adding flames to the fuel of ignorance from June 20th, 1995 to June 23rd, 2022. Again, I ask, what was that about? What was that about? But you see, thank God, the nation is out of their clutches. And it is absolutely important that we remain out of their clutches going forward. as there is absolutely no state power behind that decrepit philosophy of eat a food, rape the country, starve the youth of enlightenment, feed people on appeal, and make them dependent, starve out citizens from being properly appointed within the public service to be assured of their loyalty, and all the other shenanigans of the wheelers and dealers of our carelessness as a people, used to cause us to elect time and time again. Sad. We have to make a concerted effort, folks, to keep that organization in the dustbin of our history while we work overtime to repair our focus with enlightenment so that we can light a new and positive flame. For adding flames to the fuel of ignorance has never served our interest, whether in the past, currently, or for future. We need to position ourselves to come out of ignorance so that no conman or conwoman can attempt to use you again as a weapon against yourselves while they prosper personally. Isn't that sad? But let's take a little break here and come up for air, because the truth is we have a lot of ground to cover tonight.
EDDIE-FICATION with consultant human resource development and training specialist Eddie Frederick is powered by Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited, Antillian Group, Country Cold Store.
The strength of views and opinions expressed during edification are not necessarily a reflection or representation of the sponsors and or affiliates of this program.
Eddie Frederick has got it all.
We have a special challenge to all who decide to come into the room and be a part of edification. The person making the most outstandingly relevant comment in keeping with our topic is in for a special prize. On the table is a breakfast for two at Oliver's Restaurant at world-famous 6-star Diamond 5-Diamond Spice Island Beach Resort. Lucky winner must make a reservation and present a gift certificate upon arrival at the appointed time to redeem this gift. This will give you a wonderful opportunity to experience great service like you've never experienced it right here in Grenada from a business that is locally owned, locally managed, locally staffed, and locally trained. A true symbol of our national independence, Spice Island Beach Resort.
Inspiration, motivation, great advice, and biting of pagan pieces as only Eddie Frederick can deliver. Eddie Frederick has got it all.
As the Germans say, wunderbar. So let's get back on track here, on track to what we started. So just before, of course, you know, we usually pay homage to the people and good respect to the folks who joining us this evening. I'd like to recognize Samantha, Doris, Sawandi, my good brother, bless your heart, Evert, Cynthia, Maria, Debbie, welcome, welcome. Where I am, I don't have the cup tonight, my dear. My cup does not runneth over tonight, and I'm sure you will understand. We have Kim K, Lovely Mac. Who else? Anyhow, this is just one platform, and the next platform here speaks to people like Val, Peter, Kathleen, Patricia, Jennifer, who else? Alice, we have Charmaine, we have Wendy Ann, we have Brenda, Irva, Tamika or Tamika, Linda, Mary, who else? Anne-Marie, Sheena, Carol, Mary again, Joan, welcome, welcome, David, Sibylla, Nicole, Nakisha. Don't know if I said Yvette, but I'll say it again because I don't want to forget Yvette, my dear friend at all. Glennis, we have Yulene, we have Joanne, Facebook user. I just find that name so interesting. Facebook user, but they're always so provocative with their little snide comments. Fitzroy, Who else? Who else? Toby, Bree. It's always a pleasure to have you good folks with us in the room. But of course, we have quite a few onions to fry. And as you can see, my background is different. I'm at a different location this evening. So I am not too sure of the quality of the internet either. So please let me know, keep me in touch if the audio is not good or whatever it is. But I'm not very comfortable with the internet here because I had to do a lot of improvisation to be able to get to this point. So welcome back, folks. Welcome back. We are smart folks in the middle of a historic anniversary, which conjures up some serious memories that would serve to evoke mixed reactions. For some, they are reintroduced to the trauma of the time. When we think of the bloodbath of sorts that took place here on October 19th, 1983, and of course, the events that followed, leading to a US military intervention. That same event led many to jubilate that the end of that Marxist-Leninist revolution of Maurice Bishop, Bernard Cord, and others, regardless of the meaningful benefits that that system of government brought to the island's development. It would be remiss of me if I did not use this platform to share with you what I documented mostly from a first-hand experience in my yet-to-be-published book, This Is My Island. Just a short note here. I plan to do this chronicle of our island's history, short enough to hold interest and to give a breathtaking of our journey, and long enough to cover as many bases as possible to lead to that same level of understanding of our rich background, historic background, that is. Folks, the revolution of March 13th, 1979 to October 19th, 1983, like every other system of government since our national independence, came with its good and bad, positives and negatives. One important point many of us tend to miss is that during the revolution, our national constitution was suspended and the revolutionary administration operated in a manner that excluded any consideration for provisions therein. The main excuse of the revolution, of the revolution, was its disregard for the rights of citizens to oppose it. In return, anyone who did, whether overtly or covertly, once found out, you were to receive heavy manners. To a great extent, that led to the early demise of the revolution and contributed in large part to the jubilation that its end was met with by many Grenadians at that time. Otherwise to that, the gains of the revolution for the people of Grenada, Carriacou and Petit Martinique cannot be matched by any administration, whether of Sir Eric Gairy between 7th February 1979 and 7th February 1974, and 13th March 1979, or any other administration to follow. Sad to report, the worst performing administration in that regard, oh Lord, in that regard, is the one that served the longest, a whopping 23 years, and presided over the pauperization and the dunsification of our people, with infrastructure descending into tatters and the civilization deteriorating completely. Among the ills of that tenure, we can see today our people's tendencies towards lawlessness, knowing the price of everything and the value of absolutely nothing. Because this is the season of revolutionary nostalgia, folks, I have visited YouTube to reacquaint myself with what? Several of Maurice Bishop's utterances, his speeches, and I can't help but remark he represented a system and era where he and his colleagues were really ahead of their time. the intellectual and scholastic value of his utterances in particular, by way of his speeches, was surely testimony of this particular truth that I just expounded on. If we were to compare him and his capacity, let alone his ability to structure and deliver speeches that were engaging from beginning to end, with any other of our leaders, we would find that we would fail miserably in our comparisons. I dare you to go out, folks, and see if you yourself could find any of these speeches of other leaders, unearth them and bring them back, and you will see for yourself we have nothing but rubbish to listen to. Rubbish, total rubbish. Isn't that sad? Total rubbish to listen to. What an indictment indeed. Oh, so sad. But I'm just having a little snag here with my stuff, but it's quite okay. I've gotten it back. You see, I told you that I expect some challenges because of the poor internet quality where I am. Something just froze on me here. Thank God it's not the broadcast. But it is true. You go and see if you can find any of the speeches of the longest serving prime minister of this country. And you know who that is. The day we just get rid of. And all you find is a bundle of rubbish. Total garbage. Cussing people, lying, talking in style, such as crap and rubbish, rubbish, rubbish. Nothing representative of any deep philosophy. Nothing about development. Nothing about people. Always cussing at people and talking garbage. You didn't find that with Maurice Bishop. A lot of his speeches are still relevant today. Allow me, therefore, to move on to share with you the collapse of the revolution, which is chapter 11 of my yet unpublished book titled, This is My Island. This account is not what I imagined, you know, folks. It's not something I read or interviewed others to glean from and get their perspective to share with you. Oh no. This represents history that I witnessed firsthand on account of my knack for paying attention from an early age. Something a lot of you still don't do, even at your adult age. You know, I therefore refer to it as my pedestrian history. History I lived with and walked with, as against using the word pedestrian to degrade and insult. Before we go through this, though, I would say we're going to have to take a little come up for air, but I still want to make a point. One thing I contemplate is this designating October 19th as a public holiday in recognition of the significance of the day that the People's Revolution imploded, when ideologues destroyed Grenada's chance of really becoming the envy of this entire region. I dare say it is quite another, though. It's great to contemplate this public holiday, but it's quite another if we continue adding flames to the fuel of ignorance by continuing to work with an education system that actively contributes to a stubbornly dunce and inferior human landscape by excluding valuable information on this important aspect of our history from our schools. We'll take a little break here, we'll come back, and I'll share with you that historical account.
EDDIE-FICATION with consultant human resource development and training specialist Frederick is powered by Grenada Cooperative, Bank Limited, Antillian Group, Country Cold Store.
The strength of views and opinions expressed during edification are not necessarily a reflection or representation of sponsors and affiliates of this program.
Eddie Frederick has got it all.
We have a special to all who decide to come into the room and be a part of edification. The person making the most outstandingly relevant comment in keeping with our topic is in for a special prize. On the table is a breakfast for two at Oliver's Restaurant at world-famous 6-star Diamond 5-Diamond Spice Island Beach Resort. Lucky winner must make a reservation and present a gift certificate upon arrival at the appointed time to redeem this gift. This will give you a wonderful opportunity to experience great service like you've never experienced it right here in Grenada from a business that is locally owned, locally managed, locally staffed, and locally trained. A true symbol of our national independence, Spice Island Beach Resort.
Inspiration, motivation, great advice, and biting opinion pieces as only Eddie Frederick can deliver. Eddie Frederick has got it all.
Good. And of course, you know, we have quite a bit of comments coming in here. I see one is saying, throwing words and whining. National speech, you know, but throwing words and whining. You remember election day when they finish? Give me a wine there, boy. Give me a wine. Go down. Like Dummy James. Sad. Really sad, you know, folks, when you think of where this lovely little leading country came from and ended up. Sometimes you feel to cry. You feel to just stand up and bawl because you never thought that this country could have sunken so low to the lolly drain. And we had leaders. Sad, eh? Woo! What a travesty. The collapse of the revolution. Welcome back. The events which triggered the October 1983 crisis and subsequent US-led Allied forces invasion began in October of 1982, funny enough, a year before, when Prime Minister Maurice Bishop was pressured to bar Cuban Ambassador Julian Rizzo from further attendance at cabinet meetings. This served to anger the Soviets and Cubans and estranged the Bishop faction from hardline Grenadian Marxists led by Bernard Cord. It's also said, though never substantiated, that the rumor of a rift in the leadership of the party manifested itself since then, and Bishop was forced to come out on radio around midnight one night to make a statement asking people to desist from spreading rumors for fear that anyone found to be participating in any such rumor will be placed under heavy manners. It is said that the faction of the NJM, which was led by Bernard Cord, was known as OREL, Organization for Revolutionary Education and Liberation. This grouping, Phantom OREL, was believed never to have fully integrated with the accepted and perceived well-meaning faction led by overly charismatic Maurice Bishop. This is where the perceived hardline communist influence in the NJM originated, and it was thought that Bishop did not stand a chance. It is suspected that on account of the worsening of relations between Bishop and Cord, and the former's reluctance to speed up the rate at which Grenada were to be transformed into a Marxist-Leninist state, contributed and led to an effort on the part of Bishop to better Grenada's relations with the United States. October 13th, Prime Minister Bishop, who had only recently returned from an official visit to the state of Czechoslovakia back then and Hungary, passed through Cuba, where he had a short chat with President Fidel Castro, his Cuban counterpart, was deposed by the hardline faction of the PRG and army on October 13th, 1983. Maurice Bishop placed under house arrest. It seemed to have started with a violent disagreement and split in the ranks of the Politburo and Central Committee, with OREL members seemingly having the greatest say. The army moved on the side which Bernard Cord was said to be the leader of the power struggle with Bishop. On the evening of Wednesday, October 12th, 1983, the Prime Minister was placed under house arrest. Foot soldiers like Selwyn Strong is reported to have been seen on foot, moving from workplace to workplace in St. George's, telling workers that Bernard Cord had taken over as Prime Minister. His bishop was no longer capable of running the government. The response was that of rejection and spontaneous shouts, "We don't want Cord." Bishop was accused of not being a true revolutionary, and Grenadians were reminded that the army would tolerate absolutely no manifestation of counter-revolutionary activities. Bishop's house arrest was for 6 days at his official residence at Mount Weldale. Sadness coupled with confusion ruled the minds of Bishop's supporters. It was to them, as one man put it, changing the chief without informing the tribe. People, for the most part, were prepared for anything except to agree to having Bernard Cord replace Maurice Bishop. They therefore took to the streets and demonstrated in their numbers. A source close to what was regarded as the reformed RMC elements is recorded as having said that during Bishop's incarceration, efforts were made to keep him as far as possible from the resident Cuban ambassador Julian Rizzo. A coming together of both could have sparked a decisive response from the Cubans, who may have acted similarly as they did to the opposition in Angola in response to the appeal for help by the Cuban-backed president. The worst could have happened, since the Cuban construction workers at Point Saline International Airport, the site at the time, were generally believed to be men from the front line in Angola who were using this airport construction assignment to reorient themselves before returning to Cuba. The fervor with which opposition to the thought of Bernard Cord assuming leadership of Grenada was received forced him, Bernard Cord, to resign the position of Minister of Finance and Trade. An additional reason given related to the rumor that he and his wife were plotting to kill Maurice Bishop, which he termed a vicious lie. An announcement came on Radio Free Grenada, the official mouthpiece of the PRG, that following the announcement of the resignation of the Minister of Finance, that Mr. Nazim Burke, an economist back then, has been appointed Minister of Finance. More speculation mounted as things became even more unclear. Unison Whiteman, PRG's Minister of Foreign Affairs, was on official business in the United States and in transit in Barbados this week. On Saturday, 15th October, Kenrick Radix, Minister of Fisheries and Agro-Industries, attempted to stir up things a little more with a small crowd through the streets of St. George's, asking businesses to close their doors in support. He was later arrested by the armed forces. Not only were the people of Grenada confused, but the rest of the region and indeed the world. Never mind the length of time General Hudson Austin took on radio to relate what he hoped may have quelled people's skipping spirits. More sympathy for Maurice Bishop was evoked, and people preferred to accept Bishop as against Cord. The people were eager to take matters into their own hands, and although there were no means of mobilizing the masses other than word of mouth, people's restlessness created assemblies of small groups all over. School children were in the forefront of reaction to the situation. All this time, the radio station was making several announcements relating to no tolerance for anyone who attempts to disturb the peace. That did not deter the people of Grenada, who stood firm and rose up in their numbers on October 19th, 1983. Again, students spearheaded the 9 a.m. mass demonstration up Lucas Street to Mount Welldale, the official residence of the revolutionary leader. In the forefront of the crowd was Unison Whiteman, who had by this time returned to Grenada, although he was advised against it by close friends in Barbados. The chaos of the ensuing period contributed to the spontaneous and steady growth of the crowd of demonstrators in St. George's. Up to the time of the street march with chants of "We want, we leader," there was no hint that the demonstrators had planned to bulldoze their way into the heavily fortified residence to release their leader from house arrest. One thing led to another, and although the sentry fired shots over their heads in an effort to frighten them off, they were overpowered, and both Maurice Bishop and his Minister of Education, Jacqueline Creff, were freed. It was quite noticeable that the chant of the demonstrators had changed to "We get, we leader." This must have created some measure of panic on the part of the hardline, the Marxist-Leninists. The crowd then led him, Maurice Bishop, to Fort Rupert, which is now today Fort George, where he sought refuge and was treated medically by nurses from the General Hospital, led at the time by Ann Peters. Speculation is rife that treachery was involved in the move to bring Bishop to Fort Rupert. The close to 25,000 people that was estimated in St. George's on that day were divided between the Market Square and Fort Rupert, now Fort George. You know, when we take into consideration how much of our rich local history our mostly youthful population have been deprived of, no wonder we seem programmed to repeat the mistakes of the past without realizing that our progress will always be contained within a circular movement. If we therefore designate October 19th as a public holiday in recognition of the total significance of this day that the People's Revolution imploded, we have to make sure that we do not continue adding flames to the fuel of ignorance. We have some serious nuisance religious holidays that our lack of political will prevented past leaders from discontinuing on account of their expediency. Whit Monday and Corpus Christi are two such holidays. We must consider removing them altogether. Catholic countries more than ours don't shut their countries down for them. Why should we? We need some strong leadership here for what I consider a simple decision like this to be made. It is time we put our people to work in this country, in this transformational agenda. From one of these public holidays, we can get good comfort in setting up more meaningful ones. Folks, Whit Monday or Pentecost Monday is a Christian holiday. It is the day after Pentecost, also known as Whit Sunday or Whit Sunday, which commemorated the descent of the Holy Ghost upon the disciples of Jesus Christ, according to the New Testament within the Bible. Most of you love to get the holiday. You know what you like to get it for? You don't even know the meaning of it. You like to get it for barbecue and drink rum and wine and jam, not even realizing its religious significance. Therein lies how much, as a people, we keep mamagaying ourselves about being a Christian society when we are more focused on being members and operatives of the Jesus industry. I say, take the holiday away and again, put the nation back to work. Let's take a little break here. and we come back with the fourth and final segment.
EDDIE-FICATION with consultant human resource development and training specialist Eddie Frederick is powered by Grenada Cooperative, Bank Limited, Antillian Group, Country Cold Store.
The strength of views and opinions expressed during edification are not necessarily a reflection or representation of the sponsors and or affiliates of this program.
Eddie Frederick has got it all.
We have a special challenge to all who decide to come into the room and be a part of edification. The person making the most outstandingly relevant comment in keeping with the topic is in for a special prize. On the table is breakfast for two at Olive's Restaurant, world famous 6-star diamond, 5-diamond Spice Island Beach Resort. Lucky winner must make a reservation and present a gift certificate upon arrival at the appointed time to redeem this gift. This will give you a wonderful opportunity to experience great service like you've never experienced it right here in Grenada from a business that is locally owned, locally managed, locally staffed, and locally trained. A true symbol of our national independence, Spice Island Beach Resort.
Inspiration, motivation, great advice, and fighting pagan pieces as only Eddie Frederick can deliver. Eddie Frederick has got it all.
Good. So we come back to this final segment now, but we're getting some very interesting comments here. It's so sad that all this spicy history could have been missing from our people. No wonder we're so vicarious and lawless and anyhow and lolly and rubbish. We were better people than this, folks. And every generation should have come to be better than the one before, not worse. Somebody saying we didn't have a leader before Deacon was elected, we had a ruler. Well, of course, that's right. That is so true. All you that had a ruler, because I was always never ruled. Nobody could rule me. It's sad that we allowed our country, our nation, to descend in this abyss of nothingness, where people can creatively use government to manipulate funds from the national treasury and enjoy themselves, have staycation. Remember I said that last week? Staycation, and dress from the staycation to go to work, mama guy and all you, while you all dunserize and pauperize and you have nothing. Nowhere to go, no hope. But your gray matter inside you that not functioning well, causing you to go out and still put X by them to keep them in staycation. Let me continue this here. Welcome back. Let's continue on the collapse of the revolution. Folks, the arrival of BTR-6T armored personnel carriers loaded with soldiers and dangerous ammunition was met with loud cheers, which was soon muffled by the sound of heavy artillery fire. You know what? People thought that these things were coming now to put order, secure the Prime Minister, and return Grenada to normalcy. That was not to be. Shooting ensued, and the thousands of people up at Fort Rupert found themselves scampering for cover. The adrenaline rush was so powerful that people jumped 40-feet walls like they were stepping over a rock in a yard, while others had a greater challenge to scale much higher walls. Critical cases were admitted to the General Hospital, while some of the unfortunates leapt to their deaths. Later on that day, Prime Minister Maurice Bishop, Jacqueline Kreft, Minister of Education, Unison Whiteman, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Norris Bain, Minister of Housing, Vincent Noel, Vice Minister for National Mobilization, Fitzroy Bain, Trade Unionist, Evelyn Maitland, bodywork man and mechanic, Keith Halen, worker, were executed against a wall on which was written, "Towards greater discipline in the People's Revolutionary Army." The full list of those massacred is still unknown. The horrible events of October 19th climaxed with an announcement which was made by General Hudson Austin, now deceased, in a rather shaky voice at around 9:10 p.m. He announced the execution of Maurice Bishop and his cabinet sympathizers, and made no mention of the other civilians who lost their lives or were badly injured as a result of the unthinkable act of violence against the people of Grenada. He announced the 24-hour curfew, mispronouncing the word curfew, which at least triggered a bit of a laugh in such a trying time by the light-hearted. Anyone seen outside of their homes was to be shot on sight. A 16-man revolutionary military council was formed with General Hudson Austin as chairman. Was also announced to take charge of the country's affairs going forward. The other members of the RMC were Lieutenant Colonel Liam James, head of intelligence and member of the Central Committee; Ewart Lane, member of the Central Committee; Tan Bartholomew and Ian St. Bernard, both members of the Central Committee; Chris Stroud, major in the PRA; Major Keith Roberts, Major Basil Guy Hagan, Captain Lester Redhead, Major Huey Romaine, Ashley Ramfolks, Rudolph Ogilvie, Ayman Abdullah, Raymond Nelson, Kenrick Fraser, and Leon Cornwall. It is believed that the members of the Central Committee were working closely with the RMC were Bernard Cord, his wife Phyllis, and Selwyn Strawn. The events as they unfolded, folks, would have no doubt horrified the outside world and must have helped to catalyze, speed up the actions which were to follow. The 4-day curfew caught many without food in their homes, and the granting of a 4-hour reprieve, though welcomed, was nowhere close to adequate to obtain what was really needed, since the queues at the shops were too long. Let's now take a look at what followed. Grenada gained a reputation for being the tiny island in the Caribbean which shook the world. Many locals wished there was never an October 1983. And others again wished nobody remembers 1983. Whatever anyone may think of the year 1983, it cannot be denied that it was a year of action and suspense, which climaxed in horror. On October 20th, Caribbean leaders voiced their outrage on behalf of all the peoples of the region. Jamaica broke off diplomatic relations with Grenada, and Trinidad imposed economic sanctions and slapped a visa restriction on any Grenadian wishing to travel to Trinidad and Tobago. On October 21st, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, held an emergency summit in Barbados. They agreed to remove Grenada from the OECS. President Ronald Reagan of the United States at the time was not in the mood to jeopardize the safety and security of the over 1,000 American students based at the offshore medical university at the time, St. George's University School of Medicine. He therefore sent a naval fleet of 11 ships and 2,000 Marines off Grenada. On October 22nd, CARICOM, to include Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Belize, the Bahamas, Antigua, St. Vincent, Dominica, St. Lucia, Barbados, St. Kitts and Nevis, and Montserrat, held an emergency meeting in Trinidad. October 23rd, it was agreed at that summit that Grenada be suspended from CARICOM and that all CNA links with Grenada be suspended. October 24th, Grenadians were freed from the 24-hour shoot-to-kill curfew and the few who turned out to work, they wore mourning clothes. Many offices remained closed, and that day was used to complete panic shopping. October 25th came. The United States, together with regional armed forces, on the invitation of the OECS, Jamaica and Barbados, intervened in Grenada's affairs under the pretext of restoring democracy to the Spice Isle. The chairperson of the OECS and Prime Minister of Dominica at the time, Eugenia Charles, claimed that the military invasion was at the request of Governor General Sir Paul Scoon. True or false, we don't know, but that's what she said. Fighting ensued and continued for a few days as the US bombed certain strategic sections of the island's capital, which were believed to be heavily armed by the Revolutionary Military Council, the RMC. The might of the United States, coupled with the confused state in which the Cubans found themselves on the island without any command from Castro to intervene, helped to prescribe the victory the Americans enjoyed during the early days of the intervention. The unassuming capacity of the state of Grenada's fighting might caught the Americans unawares. Their arrival in Grenada with outdated tourist maps, which lacked relevant details for accuracy, proved a hindrance to the US, who suffered some casualties. 19 men were reported as lost in Grenada battle and are today remembered by a monument erected on the grounds of the St. George's University at Trublu, St. George. It is believed by many that the Americans lost more than 19 men in Grenada, since at the same time, the bombing of the American troops in Lebanon had taken place, and casualties from Grenada may have been thrown for convenience in that Middle East lot to save embarrassment. Quite a number of US helicopters were brought down by anti-aircraft firepower. Those I can personally vouch for are as follows. One which crash-landed in the Tontine playing field, and its occupants, who came out surrendering, being slain at the hands of the local military. Another on Grandans Beach, one near the Calabash Hotel in Lansapine, and one which started its descent off Fort George, completing its journey near Pandy Beach. There was another which was reported to have been brought down in Camp Calavini. Now, many of the members of the People's Revolutionary Army, the PRA, fled the scene when the real firepower of the US was employed, with fighters dropping guided missiles on strategic areas. It was reported that the coordinates for the precise location of Radio Free Grenada, RFG, the island's lone radio station back then, located in the heart of the tourist belt at the foothills of Cinnamon Hill Hotel, were given to the SS Guam, which was located very far offshore. It was countdown time for RFG, whose hours were numbered. Very shortly, RFG was no more. A search ensued to round up all members of the RMC and close aides of the Politburo, Central Committee, and of course, Orel. Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher of Britain added her voice of condemnation of the US action to intervene. Folks, the foregoing represents a chronicled account of our history that I witnessed firsthand on account of my knack for paying attention from an early age. I therefore refer to it as my pedestrian history, history I lived and walked with, as against using the word pedestrian to degrade and insult. The entire text comes from my soon to be published. I don't know how I'm publishing it yet, but I'm still toying with the idea. The Collapse of the Revolution, chapter 11 of This Is My Island. Before I take off this evening, we have another 6 minutes before it actually wraps up at 8. I would just probably like to look at some of your comments and see if we can have a little bit of interaction here. Because in truth and in fact, this is part of our rich history, folks, that we've been prevented from knowing over the years. And notwithstanding that I've been sharing this for years now, people still don't know it. We have young people who don't even know the name of the Governor General. We have young people that don't even know what's going on in Trinidad. That Trinidad is having murder upon murder upon murder. But on a clear day for Mardi Gras, some parts of St. David's, you can see the outline of Trinidad. What is that? That's a threat. Because geographically, look at its proximity to us. But we have no idea because we are not paying attention. We just ambling through life. Ramana, man, I tell you, we did fuss and full traffic jam on the carriage to go on a Ramana cruise. We want to look at Tebe and Bacchanal on Facebook. We don't know how to scroll when we see somebody think that we don't like. We have to go on there instead of putting whatever you want to say under your page. You have to go on the people thing to look for Bacchanal and Tebe. Folks, we have to move away from that. That kind of attitude cannot build a nation. We have to stop it and start focusing on things that mean something to us, that can add value to our lives and make us better citizens. Not bitter because we embroiled in people's business and people's affairs. We have to start to mind our own business because we've never prospered in the past from minding other people's business. But rum and wine we did. We jam in and we first to reach. Matter of fact, if you give us a chance, we'll sleep the night before on spot because we don't want to be late. Where we get this vicarious culture from? We have become a people of nothingness. We have to change that. We have people going to work every day to continue the confusion they made the day before. And they expect to get a raise of pay because the cost of living gone up when they're not even producing on the job, only eating TB. We have people in places standing up and watching you bad eye and cross eye, and they are supposed to be serving you and you are the customer. Bad attitude. But if the people who are hiring them had done their interviews properly, they would see they were nobody to hire in the first place. And these people who are hired blocking space of people who would have been adding value to the workplace instead. We have to change our attitudes, folks. Because the people who don't know their history will be doomed to repeat it. I find I get on enough. You find so? Time for me to go. Time for me to go, but we need to pay attention. And those of you who are adults listening to me, viewing this program, share this with your children and your grandchildren. I have formed bonds with people whose grandparents used to put them sit down to listen to me. I'm on radio 37 years, you know, folks. I am broadcasting 37 years now. And what happened? These young people have turned out to be proper people today. Why? They know what's going on. Their finger was on the pulse. There are some of them I'm just meeting, and we are like kindred spirits. Why? Because even without knowing me physically and personally, they knew me because they were experiencing me over the years. And they are now adults and what? Reaching out. Reaching out and reaching out in a very positive way. What does that say? But you know what's interesting? You can't beat consistency. Because the consistency has been there for the 37 years. Very interesting. I love what I do, doesn't it show? And I always tell people I'm the 8th day of the week. You could vex if you want, but I'm coming just like how Sunday does come, Monday does come, Tuesday does come, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Eddie. So I'm the 8th day of the week. Folks, I'm in, I'm out, and I'm gone. So see you next week. Regular programming. Until then, I beseech you folks, stay well, stay safe, and remain lifted. Remember, after this is done, share the live. Let's get the gospel of our history out so that you can understand that we have a rich history that no other Caribbean country has. And we need to be proud of it, and we need to know it. Okay? So all the best. To level. Cheers, folks. Cheers. It's really a plum-pleasing pleasure to have been on with you tonight. And as I said, even if I'm off location, I found it necessary to come on still and do this. That is commitment.
EDDIE-FICATION with consultant human resource development and training specialist Eddie Frederick is powered by Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited and Tillian Group Country Cold Store.
Living with the pandemic hasn't been easy, but that does not mean that life has to fall apart. Work, play, and take care of your finances from home. Connect with friends on social media, host Zoom meetings with colleagues, and use Co-op Bank's e-banking to pay your bills and manage your funds. Log on to www.grenadacoopbank.com and sign up for Co-op Bank's e-banking.
I want the best for my family, so every meal has to be perfect. Every bite has to say, There's no doubt in my mind that the best in frozen meats and vegetables has to come from the Country Cold Store. Hams, turkeys, sausages, beef, pork, chicken. I just know my family is in safe hands. Thank you, Country Cold Store, for being there for us for the past 40 years.
The Country Cold Store, providing the best in frozen meats and vegetables since 1969.
Co-op Bank introduces e-payments, our new e-banking feature that allows you to send money to friends or family. E-payments, a swift, simple, and secure way of transferring money.
Welcome home. Believe in our strength. We'll stand by you. Protection from all perils, big and small. Reassurance we give. It's so clear to see. Peace of mind, that's our service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Tillian Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.
We have a special challenge to all who decide to come into the room and be a part of EDDIE-FICATION. The person making the most outstandingly relevant comment in keeping with our topic is in for a special prize. On the table is a breakfast for two at Oliver's Restaurant at world-famous 6-star Diamond 5 Diamond Spice Island Beach Resort. Lucky winner must make a reservation and present gift certificate upon arrival at the appointed time to redeem this gift. This will give you a wonderful opportunity to experience great service like you've never experienced it right here in Grenada from a business that is locally owned, locally managed, locally staffed, and locally trained. A true symbol of our national independence, Spice Island Beach Resort.
Eddie Frederick has got it all. Inspiration, motivation, great advice, and biting opinion pieces as only Eddie Frederick can deliver. Eddie Frederick has got it all.